All right, so we are now on, I guess this would be part 3 of our painting, our working on our acrylic painting. Once again, this is, we're working from using a painting by Nicholas Bott, Canadian landscape artist. And this is our reference and our inspiration that we're using. So not our own piece. I just think it's important to clarify that. But the whole point is that we learn from each other and we take inspiration from other artists and we take their ideas so that we can grow in our own. And of course, I suppose in some sense, it's good to be doing this because perhaps this summer, you guys might be inspired to do like Mr. Bott and so many artists, the Impressionists, I think of the group of 7 from Canada who would go outside, take their paints and paint right outdoors. Of course, we know it's called plein air painting, which is just an absolute joy. It's still one of my favorites to get out of the studio, get outside where I love being. It's inconvenient, it's messy, it's way more difficult, of course. It's not as comfortable, but to be feeling and smelling and hearing the scene in front of you that you are painting, anyone who's done so would agree with me. And if you've not had a chance to, and you get the chance, it's a wonderful experience, even if your painting doesn't turn out well. And usually when you start, it doesn't usually go that well when you're starting. So because it's so many new things to learn and to get a hold of and everything. So, but you can still, of course, doing something like that, you wouldn't have near as much time. But I think one of the cool things about doing plein air work is it really just forces you to loosen up. Because you simply don't, you don't have as much time. You often have to finish it in one sitting. Although Monet, we know, would go back to his places. He would do it day after day when the weather, the time, everything, the atmosphere was the same. So anyway, but having this foundation, this understanding of really simplifying into shape can really be helpful for that. So one thing you would have trouble with doing acrylic outdoors is, especially if you're in the sun, your paints dry really fast. And that can sometimes cause some issues. So sometimes, which is why often artists do oil outdoors for plein air. I think it's probably typically done in oil, but it's not, the techniques aren't entirely different. So, all right, let's get going here. Let me switch to our view of the painting down here. Okay, and let's take a look, get our bearings here, compare the two, where are we at. So the main thing that we started with and really focusing on once again is getting our separation of our values. Value really matters so much. We try to approach this not so much thinking of mountains and clouds and rocks and streams, and of course that's there, but we really want to, when you're simplifying, you really have to be able to just break it down into the shape. But that doesn't mean to reduce it. I don't like that word, to reduce it, because you just capture so much when you can see that shape and you get what's essential and you really capture the essence of this. So this becomes the essence of the mountain. This is just shapes of color which are just expressing that mountain and this hillside and these trees, and that's really what we're going for. So we've separated those our darks and our lights. Value is, as long as you get those values established, you can really go kind of wild and crazy within there. But I sort of figure if we just focus on first our values and second our warm and cool, then we can have fun. We don't have to copy Mr. Bot. We don't have to copy this artist. We don't have to copy this painting. We don't have to do everything exactly as he did, but we're sticking pretty close because we're still at that learning stage. And as we would grow, we would even break out of that more. So the reason I'm saying that is don't get too caught up in, because we're going to start now going on into our mountain and getting these grasses in and our trees, and I think we'll even probably finish it. Don't get so caught up in having to match these colors exactly, okay? Don't worry if your greens are a little bit green, you know, that are shadows, because we're going to get some more into there, that our highlights and our trees are the exact same green. Don't get caught up into that. But what we do want to at least be thinking about is that it's warm, okay? Because it's really, we feel that warm light, and that's a big part of what's happening here. That's capturing the atmosphere. So we want it to feel warm. So whatever colors we're going to work in here, we want to be predominantly sticking in the warm area here and in our greens. So we want our greens to feel warm. We were using very cool greens on our trees at first because we were laying in the deep shadows in the background. Now we're going to layer our highlights, our warm highlights on top. So we just think about the value, how light or how dark your greens are that you're going to put in here, and just think about how warm. Okay, so we warm up our greens by adding yellow, typically yellow or even orange sometimes, or an ochre. This is a wonderful, I like to often use this if I this color here. So it's just yeah, yellow ochre, or raw sienna is also very similar to it. But you can also, you know, you can pull it off with, you know, even bringing in a little orange. Not too much orange, because orange of course contains red, and we know that red is the opposite of green, and it will neutralize it if we're not careful. And you don't want your highlights to, you don't want to dull your highlights, right? Because, you know, they're picking up the sun. So when you bring in a little orange, it has to be just very minimal, which is often why I like to go with the yellow ochre. So, all right, so let's go ahead though. Let's dive into our mountain, I think. Let me think about this. Should we, or should we get our grass in? Who knows? Doesn't really matter. I think let's go in with our mountain, and because these warm colors here, I think we can repeat a lot of it in our hillside, as we've already started doing. We were laying this in, we were putting our colors in our hillside, getting some of those values established. We're warming it up just a little bit, but now we're really going to get nice and warm. And then we'll do this at the same time, and then that will lead us into brightening up our greens. Okay, so I think we'll simply start with the orange. Okay, so let's get some orange on our palette here. Got my, move this aside here, and still using my same palette, wax paper palette here. Works great, cheap. Again, I prefer using containers of paint because, again, I'm used to working on a classroom budget, and so of course I would keep my costs down as much as possible. So that's way I could afford the more expensive paints, and but when we can put it back, what we didn't use, it's just a simple way of saving yourself a little bit of money here. So I'm going to start off with some orange. What else do we have in there? I don't want it too bright, so I'm going to bring in a little bit of blue, but I'm going to go with this cerulean. This lighter blue, I think, will be okay. Wipe off my palette knife here. So I'm not going to use much of this blue. It's just going to be a wee little bit. I'll put it back in my same spot here where I had my cerulean last time. If you don't have cerulean, You can use the phthalo with white. I'll be putting down white anyway, of course, because we want to keep our value high for this. So I've got my globby white here still again. My globby white that looks like cottage cheese. What else do I want? I'm feeling this purple, okay, which I think will be good because we have this in there before. So I'm going to bring in a little bit of this magenta. I've been using magenta. If you have a violet or a purple, that should be fine as well. So let's get some of this down.
Hi, Rick, are you able to put the camera on your paint? Like what direction are we going?
With the colors?
Yeah.
So we're going to be sticking to really just the warm. So I'm really looking at this and what do I see in here? So I'm thinking this whole area. I'm going to get yellow in there yet because we need a little, it gets really pretty bright up here and we really want to catch that bright. So we're going to get yellow and orange. I'm going with, in order to neutralize my orange some, because this, we can see this is a duller than over here. Okay, we don't want to get, you know, well, I don't, I mean, anyway, you can have fun as an artist. You can get carried away. You know, you can crank up that saturation and really brighten up those warm colors if that's what you like. You know, feel free to go about doing that. I'm going to keep mine, you know, a bit muted, a bit more neutralized. So that's why I'm bringing in the blue and purple. And I really feel there's that, yeah, it has a purplish hint to it back here. I'm going to get white. So right now, oh no, sorry, I have the white already. So I think just right now I need just my yellow. So I've grabbed some white over here. I've grabbed some of the cerulean, the lighter blue. Okay. I've got my magenta and mostly orange, of course. Okay. And now I'm just going to grab a little bit of yellow. And I think with those colors we'll be good to go. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. So I'm going to work with, so I've got my palette ready to go. Just so you know, I do go ahead and I may put my colors on here, but when I mix my colors, I do like to mix on a more neutral surface. Okay. That's another reason why I do like the wax paper. It's a bit more around the middle value. It's very neutral, so it helps me see the colors a little more pure. I kind of prefer that over the bright white palette. That's just personal preference. But I'm never going to mix my color on top of another color like this, because that really does alter. You know, colors look different depending on the colors they're on top of or whatever's around them. So I do want to, you know, I'm always going to move to a newer spot on my palette. Okay. Now, of course, as you know from prior, you know, I will keep changing that color as I work on it. You know, this started off with this blue, but by the time I was done, you know, it had changed quite a bit. And so I'll bring colors into the color as I go, changing it. I believe that just really helps keep things unified. So, all right, I'm going to go with we're going to be working with a small brush. here. So I'm going to probably be painting with this smaller one, okay, because I want to, you know, get those strokes in there, but I'll probably mix it up with the bigger one. Or yeah, perhaps actually I think I'll just work, even just mix with a palette knife too. Sometimes I use palette knife, sometimes I use brush. Yeah, to be honest, sometimes I really, maybe it's because it's acrylic, not oil, I'm not sure, but I do sometimes find I can mix better with the brush than with paint. Yeah, I don't think it really matters. It's really up to you. Okay, so this is predominantly orange. So I'm gonna start with my orange and bring my colors into that. And I'm not gonna go with the brightest. Okay, I'm gonna work my way getting brighter and brighter as I go. Okay, start with dark and we work towards light is pretty standard. Oh, I should probably have this over here so you can see my color mixing. Okay, trying to cram everything in here. Maybe if I back up a little bit with my camera here. Okay, so I'm going to pull some paint out to the side here so I can keep most of my colors pure. Okay, right away I'm gonna neutralize this down a little bit. So I'm gonna pull in just a hint of my blue, not much, because it really is going to change it really quick. So I can always add more. And it's going to darken it pretty quick. And that's okay. We don't mind that. But I would rather grab it slowly. I can control it so much better. Oop, that was maybe, no, I'm okay. Very good. Thought that was a bit too much. There we go. Okay, so we're getting a nice, this is neutralizing it down. I'm gonna bring in a bit of white, because otherwise this is going to be probably even darker than what I have there. Yeah, so I'm going to bring in a bit of white. Let's bring our values up. Okay. So we really do, you know, before I put my brush to the canvas, at the start of the painting, I spend some time thinking and doing a bit of designing in my head and just sort of planning and wondering and trying to establish a fairly strong sense of what direction am I going to go. Okay, I got one of my big paint globs here. Let's get rid of that. Nothing gets set in stone. All my ideas are really kind of set in the sand because I'm going to change. I'll make decisions responding to everything I've seen, because everything has to relate together. Every brush stroke really is, every shape I paint has to relate to something else. It's like when you're drawing, you put down your first line, and then the next line has to relate to the first one, and then the next line relates to those two, and so on and so on. And everything really is, you're painting by relationship, which is, I think, is wonderful, because we're following God's design when we do that, because everything God does is all based on relationship, right? So that's pretty cool. So okay, so I've got this color. You can see how I've changed it from my original orange. Not quite so bright. Okay, a little bit duller, definitely lighter. And we're going to go in with this. We're going to start laying this in. I honestly don't really know. You're always I don't know if it's going to work. And that's that's why I think painting can be so hard and so scary, because like, what if it doesn't work? What if I mess up? That's the beauty of acrylic, is wait for it to dry. And that's the beauty of the layering technique, is wait for it to dry and then paint over top of it, and usually let some of it show through anyway. Okay, so we're going to start laying this in, and once again we follow this. I want to follow the shape of this. My little happy face there. This is super bright, feeling really bright right now, but I'm going to continue with it. I just really want to kind of really get this warmth established. I know right now, looking at this, I'm going to have to tone that down some. Okay, but I'm going to paint it fairly sparse. I don't want to get too much of this. I definitely don't want to make it flat. I want my colors underneath to still show through. Okay, that's going to keep that tone down. I'm not going to go right to the edge. There's a bit of, notice this bit of shadow here, right? That dark shadow. I don't want to lose that. That shows, and it's kind of softens out. If I even paint lightly, that'll even help let some of that other color show through. But just, don't go solid. Don't go solid yet. But it's fairly dark. That's okay. I gotta watch my tree here that I don't accidentally cover up my tree. I'm gonna bring a little bit of warmth into that wrapping shadow. A little bit of that down there. So we can see this really warming up here. Let's get it back here. I'm painting gently, not making big solid shapes. I'm letting my other colors show through. This at the back should feel a little bit dullard by the time we're finished. This shouldn't be as bright as what's in the foreground, okay? And it should feel a little bit cooler. That'll help with set it back in the distance. Okay, that's sort of a principle of creating depth, is cool colors will tend to feel like they're receding and warmer colors come to the foreground. Okay, it's just that's just how the atmosphere works, and a little bit duller in the background there too. Okay, and again, if I compare the two, mine to his, mine's still darker. That's okay. Then they're our final piece. Okay, so we're gonna move on to this peak here. I'm painting almost with a bit of a dry brush. I'm not pressing down hard on some of these areas because I've noticed how the grayish color shining through is really kind of working, and a bit of that blue shine through. So I'm almost painting with a bit of a transparency to my paint, but I need a little bit more here now. Okay, my brush strokes following the form of the mountain, trying to capture that curve there. So again, my brush strokes, letting them show, letting them be there. We can really see this warming up. And on this side too, this is going to lighten up even more. I can feel myself getting eager inside to get, that lighter and even warmer. It's a little on the orange side, needs to get a little bit closer to the yellow is what I'm seeing when I compare. And also I like that. I don't have to do it because he did it. But when I look at the two, I like how this is feeling. So this helps me make that decision. Okay. If I was painting mine and it was looking very orange and I'm like, oh, I actually like the feel of the orange more than the yellowish feel, then I would continue in that direction. But I really am liking that brightness. So my first temptation is to now start mixing up my color and finish my mountain, because it's so easy. We want to get that mountain finished. But I don't want to lose the opportunity to keep my piece unified. So I'm going to bring some of my same colors into my hillside here and down into my sand down here. Okay. And there's a little bit of it there too. So I'm going to take my same paint. I'm not going to, okay. So I will later take this actual paint and we're going to change that color. But right now, while I have it, I'm going to continue on with my hillside now. Okay, because we have to warm this up as well. Oh, by the way, let me show you a little trick here. You may already have known this or seen this. Because if I go like this and I start painting here, well, one of the ways to avoid that is to, paint with your brush, holding your brush back here, and you just paint with, big strokes like this. That's wonderful when you're working on a big piece, but we're working fairly small. So you may have a steadier hand than me. So maybe you can do that. And boy, oh boy, if you can do that, how beautiful that is. But I probably just need to learn that more. I grew up as a kid drawing cartoons and, like if you can paint like this, holding your brush way back here, oh my goodness, I encourage you. I just have a lot more trouble controlling it. So I will tend to move in closer to where I have a little more control. But then I go blob, I set my hand right in my wet paint. So little trick, I just give myself something to rest my hand on. A little brush like this, nice long brush. You can buy the actual stick for it, but why? And now I just rest my hand on my stick. Okay, little trick there. And now I'm going in, warming up my hillside here. Again, don't make it solid. And follow the hill. Remember your brush strokes. We want, at least I do, maybe you don't want to do that. I don't know what you want to do with your hillside, but I do like I want my hillside to feel like it's a slanting hill slope. I like that. So you can, maybe we need to lengthen our brush stroke here a little bit more. We're doing these sort of short, choppy strokes, but maybe, this is where we look at it. What's it telling us? What are we seeing? What does it need? Talk to your piece or listen to it. Don't talk to it, listen to it. Listen to the canvas in front of you. What is it telling you that it wants? I suppose that's a way of looking at it. You listen with your eyes. Okay. So I'm going to do more longer brush strokes. Lots of that red really showing through, that initial red we put in there, and that's okay because that's keeping it nice and warm. But eventually, of course, a lot of that's going to be hidden underneath. That's going to disappear. But just those little hints of that bluer gray, I'm not covering up. Let me show you. Get close there. Can you see it? See, there it is. Okay, so you can still see the little bits of the light gray showing through. I'm not covering that up. Okay, that's going to help keep it unified with the rest of all those the rocks and stuff, because those same colors are in there too, right? Okay. And down here. So everywhere that I see this orangish grass is where I'm going to put it. And then I can't forget my shoreline like I did there. Okay, this looks funny to me. See this shape here? That dark shade is so it's such a the thickness. It's rectangular. There we go. It's so rectangular looking to me, even though it curves a little bit. It feels unnatural. Triangles, I just find, you know, shapes that are a little more triangular, not quite so rectangular, are going to feel a little more organic. Okay, so it's a little more triangular or they have a little more curve to them, but not quite the same equal thickness across. I really think that helps keep things feeling organic. So when you are simplifying, when you're doing landscapes and you're simplifying things down to shapes, if you're going to start really going for geometric shapes, circles, and things, if you're doing organic, just so you know, the more triangular will feel a little more organic. But if you really want to reduce it to just circles and squares, and go for it. Just, yeah, it's a little better there. It's not so even. All right, so I've warmed that up. I'm gonna bring just hints of it into my grass here as well. Just little bits, not much. Because there's going to be just a little bit of it showing through again. I don't know if I want to bring it into my trees necessarily. I don't think that's really necessary. Although at the top here, this top tall tree here is picking up some of the light. So maybe a little bit up in there might be good. Just a little hint of it on the right. Okay. My shoreline here, let's warm that up. Oh, there's some white excessive white on my brush. That's all right, not a big deal. And I do want to get some of those rocks that are missing for some reason. That's right. And then I see a little bit of some orangish grass down in here on this side of our rock as well. See a little bit in here in the rock.
Hi, Rick, is it possible, like when I scroll on my camera to see what you're doing, I can only get you on the full screen. Is it possible to switch it to get your camera of the painting on the full screen? I'm trying to get it bigger and it's only coming up as the view.
Then. Okay, where were we? We have warmed things up. Now it's time to lighten things up here a little bit. But I also want to get this area here as well. So I'm going to get a little bit of I'm going to bring in a little bit of my magenta in there. So I'm not going to mix it into the whole thing. I'm only going to stay just off to the side here because I want the rest of it to be able to get really nice and bright with the yellow. So this is going to stay cool. So I'm going to bring in a little bit more blue, not much. Okay, so I've got this kind of darker warm. It's almost kind of purplish, right? And that I'm going to be using for these areas here. Let's see, how's that look? It could stand a bit of white. It's a bit too dark for my liking. Let's lighten it up a little bit. There we go. Okay, I like that. So now I'm going to do kind of these darker, the areas that are not in full shadow, but you know, these kind of partially shadowed areas. So we're going to work at that. So same sort of idea, not putting it in too solid. When you layer, there can be a tendency sometimes to create polka dots. You don't want that, really. You don't want all your pieces to feel polka dotted. So do be aware if that starts to happen. Notice that. Okay, so this is creating a nice little bit of variety there, helping get that shadowy area nice and unified with the rest of it. Let's bring a little bit of it up into here. Okay, so I'm going into all of these areas here. Little bits, just little bits of it on my hill, not too much because it's a little more red than I want. I'm just going to put a bit of it. On my bit of shoreline here. A little bit on the backside of that ridge. I'm going to lighten it up a little bit more yet. Add a little more blue. Okay, so I've changed my color again. It's added some white and a little more of my blue. So it's got just a little hint more of this, a little more purple. And I'm going to lay that in here as well on this part because so you can see what we're doing is we keep just subtle changes to our color on our palette, and then we bring those in. And so if we take our time, we'll get changing our color, we'll get more of that impressionistic feel. Okay, it's not going to often usually what we struggle the most with is when we're doing this, when we're layering our colors, is we change them too much. We don't go for subtlety. You want just very subtle changes that you hardly even notice the difference. And yeah, I like how that color is working a lot, and I really am liking that we can bring this color is going to work really well on our rocks. Yeah, so it's just a really nice, it's a little bit warmer, but it's not too bright. So it's going to really work nicely in here. Yeah, very happy with what's happening with that. Let's get a bunch more of that in here. So put down these shapes. I'm running out of this color, unfortunately. Need more of it. It's a nice, warm. Okay, so I've run out and I need more. So that's okay. That's why you really want to paint around right away when you get this color that you like. Let's see if I can get a little bit more in it, of it in here, in these rocks. Let's warm these up. Some spots. Let's get a bit of that. No, nothing left on my brush. So I'm gonna have to go back in here. Let's bring in some of my orange. So I brought in some magenta once again. I have to repeat this color. I'll never get it exactly the same, but that's okay. But I do want to remember, how did I get that color? Let's do it again. I need some of this magenta brought into here. I needed some white. Let's grab a little bit of white. And there was a little bit of blue. Not much. And pretty close there. A little bit more blue. And a little bit more white. More blue yet. I think. More white. Pretty close there. More blue yet. There you go. That's pretty close. No, a little more blue. Okay, or maybe it's more of the magenta. You can see it's challenging getting the color again. I really liked that color. There we go. Got it. Close enough. Good. Okay. Keep persevering when you're trying to get those colors. Takes a little while sometimes. So let's get a little more of this. It's going to be slightly different. That's okay. A little bit back here. A little bit in here as well, because those shadows are a bit extreme. So we're going to get just a little bit, not too much. So all of these areas, I don't want those shadows quite so dark. A little too much contrast for my liking. don't get too carried away. This is feeling pretty pink. Needs a little bit more blue, I think. Let's bring some more blue into it. More yet. Okay, so I'm toning down the shadowed side of these rocks so they're not quite so, the shadow's not quite so strong. It's interesting how gray that feels when I put it on there. So just a little bit more purple. Okay, so I'm just kind of changing the colors a little bit here and there as I go. It's kind of, I'm not going to necessarily explain every single color. It's kind of hard to do that, and because it doesn't really matter, it's also good for, you know, to learn to to respond to, for you guys to, of course, be choosing what you're doing, choosing your colors based on what's happening on your painting, and not just trying to copy mine either, right? I mean, I know we're all still learning, but this one's just a little bit cooler, this color that I'm laying in here now. Okay, so it's not, oh, what's going on there? What happened there? That's some white. I didn't want that. I'll have to go over that, fix that up. Suddenly some white appeared on my brush. Yeah, there we go. Let's get rid of that. Gotta be careful, I'm starting to lose that shape there. I'm not sure I keep getting this white appearing. Somehow the color's not mixed in well enough on my paintbrush. And I'm going to use this right now. It's got a few rocks on my little beach here, the rocks that I forgot before. Okay. Oh, and yeah, this will be good. While I'm at it, I'm going to use this color to get these blue, bluish grayish tree trunks painted in. Now, they don't go, again, they don't go the whole way. I want to really keep things feeling tall and skinny, but broken, because there's leaves and branches and things in front. So once again, use my little trick so I don't set my thing. I'm gonna add a little bit of water to my paint so it flows a little nice. So again, just a bit skinny. Keep those tall, long and skinny. Don't let them feel like globs. That's definitely a challenge. That's where you want to go. Find your teeny tiny brush. So you can work with a small round, or you can work with a very small flat and just use it, paint it sideways as well. That's actually what I'm doing. So just little hints of it. Don't keep it too exact. It takes a fairly steady hand, yeah, and very light touch. Otherwise, you'll accidentally create this thick glob. Don't forget to break it up. Having a horrible glare happening here, so I'm having a hard time. You don't, you just, it just shouldn't stand out. That's the whole deal. You just don't want those tree trunks to stand out. Such a light touch, or my branch turns into a glob. Make sure when you start it too that it lines up with the bottom of the, or sorry, the center, that lines up with the center of your tree. So if you're hearing laughter in the background here, it's a good thing. Laughter means a happy home, so good to hear it. It just might be, has nothing to do with our painting. Got a little bit thick, but basically, okay, so just some subtle, they shouldn't stand out too much. You just don't want that, you know, the main part of a tree is its foliage, not its trunk, unless of course it's a dead tree or a dormant tree. Okay, but anyway, want some of that. I'm gonna add white to this while I'm a fair amount of white. I'm really gonna get some highlights on our rocks here. So I've added quite a bit of white, really lighten this up. And gonna lighten up, brighten up. Yeah, no, it's still not very light though, is it? There we go. Just okay, need to add more white yet to that. It's incredible how much lighter it looks on my palette, and then when I take it over to the painting, I realize it's actually not very light at all. So these are getting more of my extreme highlights. So this, you know, your highlights really, I'd say in your painting are typically they're like your last final details. Okay. Because you, at least with we're talking, you know, oil and acrylic. Where you put them really matters. Okay, so really think about, don't get too carried away. Like artists who paint really fast, they are able to paint fast because they're able to make decisions fast. It's not because they're not making decisions, they're just making those decisions very quickly. Everything they're doing is still very intentional. Okay, at least, you know, I'm talking to someone who's going to end up with a really solid, successful sort of painting. And so the more we are willing to spend that time learning those principles, learning those bases, laying down that foundation, and you have that foundation inside of you, you can just get faster and faster and faster, because, you know, it's like the different, you know, kind of like riding a bike, or any sport, anything. It's so much of it is just, it's muscle memory, but it's also just the memory of you inside of you just remembers and just kind of knows and sees it really fast. All of it is just, that whole side of you is just really exercised to such a degree that you're able to do it faster and faster. So I'm trying to really keep this established as put the brush stroke in, leave it, not fussing. My highlights, the lightest parts on these rocks, we might be at the point where we're finishing these rocks here. So I'm really just very conscious about where I'm putting those strokes, and then really trying to just leave them alone. But I want to get a little more blue in here. I'm feeling that's the wrong blue, I think. What happens if I put this in? The blue really picking up this sky, so I'm reflecting the sky, the blue of the sky. So I'm laying in. It was just looking too gray for my liking, so I've gone back in with a bit of blue, but I think I chose the wrong blue actually. But all right, I'm going to go back to our mountain again. Sorry if I am just rushing, racing along. So I'm going to go back to this color, and we're now going to be lightening it, getting more highlighted and brightening. So we're going to be pulling in some more yellow, fair amount of yellow, because it's our lighter color and it's also way more transparent. I'm going to mix this up with a different brush though. So I think I'm probably going to need all of this yellow. Oops, I shouldn't have had so much water in my brush. Okay, but let's not get too extreme too fast. So I've changed it quite a bit there. So let's, before I change that more, it will eventually get more. Let's first work with that I've got. And let's get a little bit of that in there. Getting brighter yet. In some of the areas, don't go solid. Let the other colors show through. It's picking up a bit of a glare there, isn't it? Okay. Just a little bit here on this one, a little bit on this one. So as you add those final highlights, you paint less and less of the space every time, a little bit less, a little bit less. I'm not going to bring too much back here. Just a little bit, but those back there, I want to keep that in the distance. So that's gonna, those will probably just have to lighten up. So I'm going to be adding yellow and white, not just yellow. So I'm going to bring in a little bit of white into this now, into my color. All right, just going to work with my small brush. Now bring in a little bit of white, lighten this up more yet. And now this is predominantly just at the top here. Watch that shape. So it's really picking up the light of our sun off to the right side of our painting. Okay, again, I don't want to go right up to the edge because I want to leave that shadow there. So we've got a little bit brighter now. Letting other parts show through. A little bit back in here. So you notice I'm always sticking to the top of it. Okay, because that's where our highlights are, at the top. Okay. Really warming that up here. Let's warm up some of our grass. Lighten that up. Again, not solid. This is grass or dirt. I'm never quite sure what that is in this painting. And that's the cool thing about it, is you don't have to know what it is in order to enjoy it. Okay, so this is kind of, I'm going to create, by sticking to the top of these shapes, I'll create form. So it's going to look like there's, that my hillside's not flat. So again, here's an orange shape. I'm also just putting my highlights at the top of it. And then that creates just a bit of a sense of that there's some form to this cluster of grass or this clump of dirt, whatever this is. Probably going to feel more like grass just because of the brush stroke I'm using. It would, you know, if I were to paint not with these short strokes, but something longer, that would more longer and clumpier, then it would feel more like clumpy dirt. Like I'm doing here. So this is now sand. So I'm going to use a different sort of brush stroke. I'm going to use more of a long. And again, this is a highlight. So I'm going to stick. Oh, I forgot to put my highlights in these rocks. I think that's the kind of art teacher I am, the kind that shows you you can make all sorts of mistakes, because I'm constantly making mistakes and errors and things as I go. But since I noticed those rocks and I keep forgetting them, I'm gonna quick go back to them because before this paint dries on me. So I clean my brush. Let's get Let's get a little bit more of a highlight established on some of those rocks there. I'm also seeing there's some dark areas that didn't quite like there. Okay. I think we can go a little bit warmer yet with our mountain. A little bit warmer, brighter. Or not brighter. Yeah, well, yeah, I guess brighter and lighter. Warmer, lighter, brighter. So we're going to bring in a little more yellow. Actually, a fair amount of yellow. You really yellow, because yellow is a more transparent paint. Typically, you use, and it's lighter. You usually need quite a bit. Normally, typically, I don't know if I ever mentioned this. Typically, when you're mixing two colors, you start with the dark, start with the lighter color, and you add the darker to it, just because you need less of the darker. Okay, so this is pretty bright, pretty bold. And so there's going to be very little of this. How do we do? Too much? No, I don't think so. Why not? Let's just go for it. Yeah, I'll work. I definitely have gotten brighter than Mr. Bot, but that's okay. I'm allowed to kind of like just what's happening. It's a bit intense, extreme, but I just like how these colors are working together. It's really fun, at least to my eye. To me, it really feels like it's picking up that bright. You don't have to go that bright if you don't want to. Okay. This needs to get lighter in here. I might make it a little more pale though. Oh, what happened here? That was kind of strange. Something happened with the recording. Anyway, my highlight of snow. How are we doing time-wise? Oh, doing good. This highlight of snow needs to be a little bit brighter, so I'm going to want to get that in there eventually, but I don't know if I'll do that now. I think it's time. Oh, I know. I needed to lighten this up back here. That's right. So I'm going to take this bright color and it's going to be too bright for in the distance, but I do like that light. So I like this bill, but it needs to be a little bit more, it needs to cool down. It's too warm for being so far in the distance. So I'm not going to cool it down with yellow because that's going to, or my blue because that's going to go green, but I can with this magenta. Use that to cool it down just a little bit. And I want it still fairly pale, but that's not near as bright as it was, or not near as warm as it was before. Still nice and warm, but it's getting more to the violet side. So I think, let's see how that looks. Yeah, I think that's going to be okay. I might even bring in a little bit more purple into that yet, perhaps. So I'm going to pull in a little bit of this. Don't make it too gray though. That's the thing, is purple and yellow make brown, right? They neutralize each other. So you got to be careful with that. So I'm going to get a little more blue, feeling green. So now I bring my magenta back into it. And now it's gone very purple. So I'm going to see if I can warm that up with a little bit of orange. There you go. Yeah. Okay, so I can do that. There we go. I think I'm getting there. And then now it's way too dark. So now I'm going to pull in a whole lot of white. And I want my value to be very, very similar to what is here. No, that's way too gray looking. I don't like that. That doesn't work there. It looks like it works, but it needs to be warmer than that. Way warmer. So maybe something more like this. And then add a whole lot of white. No, it's too warm. That's always the struggle. So I bring in my magenta again. And what do we have now? Yeah, I think what I need to do is I'm going to need to start over. I'm going to need to, this just feels like it's too warm still to me. I want to get a bit of blue in there, but I'm going to wait for that to dry, and then we'll go back to this later. So, all right, let's get going on our grass here. So I'm going to leave these colors here, and we'll start new and mix up our bright greens. This blue, now I have greens. I can use green paint. I'm gonna mix my own greens though. I prefer that. And I'm gonna try ultramarine blue first, because it's just a very pure, it's kind of like a neutral, kind of the most basic blue. And we'll just start with that plus yellow, see where we end up, and then we'll go from there. So we'll just start with the base. So I need more yellow, and on my palette, ultramarine. I'm going to need much because it's fairly bright. Greens. Grab a new palette knife. I don't want to risk dirtying my yellow. So okay, it should be enough paint. All right, so blue so much darker than the yellow. So I'm definitely going to start, as I start to mix my colors, I'm going to start with the yellow and add the bits of blue to it. Okay. Because I'm just going to need a lot more of that. Okay, so let's start with this. I'm going to start with less. Pull in just a little bit of blue. You can see it was such a small amount of blue compared to this big glob of yellow, and how much that quickly changed it. Okay, and I'm going to need more. This is my bright. It's closer to my bright greens, so I could put this in while I have it. I prefer though to do my highlights last, so I'm going to darken up my green just a little bit, and it darkens up really quickly. I really want to mix this quite well because I don't want it to get these bright streaks. It doesn't fit with this style that we're doing here. I think I like this green. I will have to see. I won't really know until I get it on my painting. That's where I'll see if it's too bright or too dark. So I can start with this brush. How are we doing? I think we'll be okay. This is kind of like a bit of a hillside back here. Okay, so I'm just going to paint with my up and down strokes because this is definitely grass. So even if my strokes go uphill, I change the angle of the brush to create a different sort of stroke, a more narrower stroke. And I'm not covering up all of this dark. I want to keep some of that dark green showing through, right, that we established there before. I'm going to go so now I switch. Yeah, I keep switching the direction of the brush. Don't try to paint individual blades of grass. That would have to be something, you know, very much in the foreground. Do try to be conscious of the shapes that end up being created, the shapes of dark that end up being created by how you're painting, how you're laying this in. Those dark shapes should also predominantly still end up feeling like they're on an angle as well. Because those are kind of like shadows. If the dark, because you'll create, as you leave dark, you'll create dark shapes, and you just don't want those dark shapes to work against you. So I'm painting right over all the areas that are going to be highlights. I'm leaving a little bit of black outline around my rocks. Makes them feel solid to me. Typically, you leave the darker area, the darker shapes near the bottom, the darker green, because that's just kind of helps create the form of this cluster of grass. Because you know, shadows naturally are, you know, near the bottom. Right? Light sources almost always come from above. It's always a bit of an odd, creates some odd visual tension when you have your light source coming from below. So it's not going to that's just not something that happens naturally in nature. So that's why we're going to let most of our dark green show below. Bring that a little closer to the camera there. Okay, so I didn't make it a solid shape. Now I might think, I can look at this in, do I like that much brown or would I like more green? And I think so. I'm going to get this a little bit more. I'm going to try and establish just a little bit more green in here. A few areas. It's going to feel a little bit different because it's right now, it doesn't have the dark, but I think it'll be okay. So especially here in the distance, I can always, add in a little bit of that, but I think this is going to actually bring these light orangey brownish areas. It's going to help bring those into unity with the rest of the green grass by just having little bits of it here and there. Okay.
Hey, how's it going?
All right. Now, do I want, is this green too bright for my trees? I don't think so, but I do see that I need some deeper, I need a bit of a deeper green in there first. So I'm going to take some of this and tone it or darken up, not all of it. I'm just going to take a little area here off to the side. And get some more of those. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to start up here. I'm going to get some of my next. So I have my deep shadows. These are still shadowed areas, but within the shadow areas, we have some variety, right? So even our shadow areas don't end up just a solid color. So this is going to be a little bit on the left, but mostly on the right side of the trees, because that's where it's a little bit lighter. But a little bit on the left as well. Okay, so I'm just not fussing with these colors. I'm not trying to make them look like leaves. I'm just putting down these shapes. And because it's so in the distance, and I just need to think about the rhythm of the clusters of leaves on these evergreens, what rhythm do we see happening? And that's all I'm thinking about, okay? And to me, it's just simply these dabs of horizontal shapes, okay? So I've got my next layer. How close can we get? There you go. Okay, so you can see, subtle. And now I can go to the next one again. These are a little bit brighter. Mostly more on the right side. Again, stick to the right because that's our light source. Couple on the left, but keep it dominant on the right. Don't overdo it. So that all of the, we don't want to lose our darks. And even fair amount at the top of the tree, because that's also picking up a little more light. So less though, less strokes of this lighter shade than of the other one. As you get lighter, you're going to put less and fewer strokes of that. And then your final highlights are just very scattered, very few. And don't make them even. Don't like stack them right on top of each other and like a neat stack of shapes. Okay, that doesn't feel organic. Make sure they have more of a, it should feel like it's random, and yet you are not doing it random because you're being very particular to keep them on the right, keep them on the left, keep them different lengths. Okay, and now I'm going to get my last final few bright highlights at the tops that are just catching the sun there. Turns out I'm not even using that yellow ochre after all. Remember I mentioned I might use some yellow ochre. Okay, so the tops of the trees are going to pick up just a little bit of make sure these tiny little strokes, yeah, don't get those, especially when you get to the tops of the trees. You can totally distort the whole shape. So very gentle touch with the brush. And then just a few, you have to sort of imagine where would the light be hitting. Okay, I mean, you may not have any idea, you may have no clue. Well, that's where you get to the point where as an artist, you really start to observe things like that. Much of your work has to happen when you're not in the studio. Okay. So it's just shapes of color, very particularly put down in the right place. Now we'll move on to the grass. Get our right highlights on our grass. Again, mostly near the top. Less of this than the last green we put down. but you can really, in this one, he really has sections where the light is really hitting. So you don't need to keep it too scattered. We can always add a little bit more. I'm really going to brighten this up here. I want to get this quite bright. But I gotta be careful I don't get too carried away and start getting too eager that I start to get careless. Continue to intentional paint. Don't want it to start to turn a little bit polka dotty, and I don't want that. As you create your shapes coming down the hill too, make sure those don't end up turning out like stripes. So all you gotta do is make sure they're not, the thickness is not exactly the same the whole way down. Make it vary, get thicker and thinner here and there. So you'll see mine's turning out also, okay, it's taking on a different sort of feel than his, right? The shape's a little bit different, that's okay. It's just, and then I want a few final really bright highlights here. So I'm really going to get some bright where, as if the sun is really hitting up here on this hillside. I'm gonna add a little more flow to my paint. Down here, so there's a little bit in here, but I'm not gonna keep it even on purpose. I'm gonna want it to feel a little, again, so it feels like it's random and varied, brighter in some areas than others. I do want this one fairly bright, as if that's picking up some light there. Okay, and I'm gonna want my foreground fairly bright as well. Not sure why I have this brownish area, so let's get rid of that. Okay, so we've got, yeah, I'd say we've definitely got the sense of a hill, don't we? Grassy hill, trees back behind there. You're gonna want to get some final bright highlights. I'm not going to do too much more to this, but because I don't have any of my dark outline, which kind of got lost and forgotten, I'm gonna kind of cheat. I guess I'll call it that. It's kind of, it feels like it's cheating because it's not gonna. Yeah, it just needs to have some good dark contrast in there, which it doesn't have. Because normally I wouldn't add this in afterwards. You'd want that. It's underneath and behind, but it needs something. Feels unfinished because it's not unified with the rest. It needs so. So let's get some of this. Deep. Sorry, keep forgetting to show you. Okay, so some of this nice deep dark colors, using the same color so it relates to the rest of it, and just mostly under my rocks. My brush is not so good. It's just not the same when you try to add this dark in afterwards. It just never works as well. And it's just, yeah, going back like this is so hard to do. So you really just don't want to, you have to kind of look over the whole thing, what you're doing. So you don't have these silly things happen where you, yeah, it's like I just kind of missed and forgot a few areas. And it's just really, at least for me, I just always find it such a challenge to get it to fit. Just in my head, it just stands out that it has such a different approach to the rest of the piece. All right, I like this turquoise because I love those turquoise lakes. His lake is a little more turquoise than mine. So I'm going to try and get a bit of that into my lake here. I find the cerulean blue, you don't get much turquoise with the ultramarine, at least not that I find. So either your cerulean, if you have it, or you can use your phthalo as well to get that with your yellow, of course. So it's fairly dark and a fairly deep turquoise. And since I've already got my cerulean here, I'm going to try it. If it doesn't work, I'm going to pull in the phthalo, but let's just give it a go. I'm already feeling this is a mistake to try and do it with just my cerulean. So it's gone pretty green, pretty turquoise. I don't know, this might be okay. Might be okay. Yeah, I think that's gonna be okay, actually. I think we'll be fine. Okay. Good to know. So just gonna let my other colors show as well. The challenge is I want to try and get my strokes at the back. If I can get those thinner and thicker strokes in the foreground, that will help create the sense of depth. To keep it unified, I'm not gonna fuss, I'm just gonna lay down these flat strokes of color. And yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. That's all I'm gonna do. And I feel this needs another layer for sure. And I think just this and the snow. Oh, wow, it's 11 o'clock already. I see we've already gone pretty much our 2 hours. But really, that's about all there's to it. I'm feeling for this piece. This still feels like it needs more of a blue of lavender color. I'm gonna see if I can get that. So there is a few touches. I think what I'll do, let me do this. I'm gonna pause it here, and then yeah, and then I'll just finish these off. But in case any of you guys need to leave, let me pause it. All right, so last few finishing touches on our snow here. I don't like how the strokes are going in my shadow, and it's only a single layer in the shadow, and it's pretty much single layer here. And I want to get some of this really bright to really catch some of the really fairly pure white. So we'll bring in some pure white into there and some blue. And I still feel like this back here needs to be cooled down yet. That's just kind of still bothering me. And what I'm feeling is kind of a lavender sort of color. Find a bunch of white here to start. Just pull this into, what do I get? Okay, I'm gonna add a little cerulean. This is gonna be too blue, I know it. And that's too much of the other red. Okay, so I think maybe I'm starting to get what I want. Okay, I really want to make sure I get my values the same. I don't want to get this too light. That's really close. I can go a little bit lighter. And I think this is maybe all that I'll be able to manage. But I think this may do it. I think this may catch what I want. I'm not going to cover up my orange, my warm colors completely. But I think this is going to work. I think this is going to cool it down and just move it a little bit back there, which is what I want it to do. I want it to feel like it's further away. It feels too close to this front side here, and I think that works. I think that gives me what I want. Oh, wow. What did I do? I got orange all over the place here. Okay, I think that did it. Yeah. Oops, can't see it there. Okay, I pushed that back just a little bit, but I'm gonna. I'm gonna warm up just this part a little bit here. Oops, sounds like someone else is on here. Someone's joined us, maybe. Oh, Betty. That's Betty.
Yeah, I
Hi,
came
Betty.
late. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We're just at the end. Yeah, we're actually normally done by now.
Yeah, because I had no internet.
Yeah, I understand. No problem. I will be posting this again.
Yeah, I sent a message to you like
Okay.
yeah, I couldn't
Okay.
get, I was like, I'm going to come late.
Yeah, it's fine.
I'm sorry.
No need to apologize. That's how things go. Don't ever worry about that. Don't ever, you make it when you can, right? That's totally fine.
Yeah.
So, but I'm just doing the last finishing touches here.
Okay.
And then, but this is all being recorded right now.
Okay.
So I'm just warming up this sand in the foreground. Keep that in the foreground. And then just going to do final finishing touches on the snow here. So where's my bigger boulder brush? The one that I like. Actually, I'm just going to switch to different. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go with this one. And pull aside a bunch of white. So I'm going to do my snowy, shadowy here, go over that again with another blue. Oh, okay, so I'm just mixing up my blue here for my shadows. And I'm going to keep it fairly similar. It's just a little bit lighter. I think that's okay, actually, if I have that just a little bit lighter, I think. Yeah, that should be fine. Okay, so I'm gonna really try and get this to follow. Oh, it's getting streaky. I don't want that. I don't want those streaks of white in there. So I'm getting my brush strokes to follow the hill. I'm not completely covering up. Still so streaky. But this should really help to unify this with the rest of the piece by got a chunk in there or something. That's what it is. Yeah, so by basically just the issue was if I have one area, even though the color may feel like I've already got the color down, but if everything else has a layered feel and then we have one section that doesn't, that's just it just loses unity. Yeah. You know, everything, there has to be similar things happening and throughout the painting. Every part of the painting needs to fit with the rest. So to suddenly have a change in technique is just really it stands out, and it's just yeah, it's just not what you're gonna want. Okay, that's very bright. It's definitely brighter than his. Which isn't necessarily bad. I just don't know if I want it that bright. I do, you know, I've turned up the saturation on the hill I feel. So it may be appropriate to have the saturation turned up in this shadow as well, but I just don't know. If that's necessarily, if I want it turned up that much. Okay, I'm gonna try and get a little bit of a hint of that shadow showing through the trees there. So I put in a few globs on purpose behind. There we go. Okay. Yeah, I think because it is so different than this, I don't want it quite so bright blue. So I'm going to tone that down. Bring in brush, it's kind of halfway. In between. So This is more lavender. Yeah, so see, this is not being unified with that. It's just too bright. Now that it's dried up, I can definitely see that, and I don't want that. I don't want that. So let me try first. If I bring in a little ultramarine blue, that's a little cooler, but I don't know if that's going to really get me what I want. I think what I need to do is actually bring in it just a tiny hint of my magenta. That'll warm it up, but that's going to get it a little bit more to the purpley side. So got a bunch of white. Just a hint of this magenta, not too much. But I think I'm going to like that better. Oh, that's too light though. Okay, so it was too light. So now I may have gotten too dark, but that's okay because I want to. Okay, so let's try that. I want my, ooh, that's too dark. Takes a little while, and it's because I'm thinking about the time here, and I'm starting to rush, and that's not good. It's not good to rush, and that's a bit too dull. So I need a little more blue. Okay, I think I got it. So I don't want this too streaky because I want it to, feel smooth like the snow. But I still want it to feel fairly layered. So I'm going to allow some of the other that earlier blue still to show through again. I'm still wondering if it's a bit too dark. It's feeling like it, but I started, so I want to make sure I first get all of this in there, and then I think I'm gonna lighten it up a bit, add a little bit more white, not too much this time. Yeah, there you go. I think it's just a little bit lighter. Just doesn't pay to rush. Just take your time. There, so now it's going to have more of a feel of being unified with the rest of it. I'm not going to bother doing his kind of Van Gogh sort of feel that he has there with all of those real obvious strokes. And just we could certainly. There we go. Okay, now I'm more happier with it. We certainly could, but yeah, I just feel I would have to do so much more changes. We would have to change so much more about the painting because suddenly it would be, again, just not, I don't believe it would be unified with the rest of it if I were to do it with mine right now, simply because mine hasn't just developed that way. So that's just a conscious choice that I am making to ensure that mine still feels unified. Okay, so I'm going to get some white in here. I don't know if I'm going to go to pure white. This is very lot cooler than mine, probably than yours. So yeah.
I have to leave, but can I show mine?
You betcha. Let's switch the thing here. Yep, go ahead and hold it up. Let's see what you got. Awesome. Very good. Nice. So the only thing that you're going to probably want to do with your rocks is get some more of the middle values from how I'm seeing it's got the dark blue and then so you've got the deep shadows and then you've got the bright highlights. You just need some of the medium parts in between. Okay, very good. And then the edges of the shapes of your grass sections, they also feel just a little solid. So maybe you might want to just break those up so it's, not, yeah, so there's just a little more of a bit of a transition. So, but very good. Nice. Definite highlights. Yeah, and then in the mountain, you might want to brighten it up because you have a blue sky, you definitely white snow. So you could brighten up the highlight on the mountain. You could push that a little bit further too if you wanted.
Okay.
So, okay. Well done. Well done, Elizabeth. Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see you. All right. I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to grab my tiniest brush and I want to get this highlight to stand out, but I need more. Oh, maybe I can get off of here. I'm going to need to get more white paint as well. There, I just wanted to get that snow brightened up a little bit. Again, a very gentle touch to trying to fade that out there. There we go. Okay, so I need more white, and then we're going to get just our brighter highlights. I might add a touch of, I'm probably going to bring in a touch of orange into my white or yellow even. I'm thinking I might do the same. Just a hint of a yellowy orange into these brightest spots on my snow. so that it's not overpowering white, but not much. I don't want to do too much here. Let's see what we got so far. That's a little bright for my liking. There, I think this is going to be a little bit better. Okay, so then the rest of our snow will also have the layered sort of look. I can work with my brush strokes to follow along. And need some music playing in the background or something. Well, maybe when oops. So I'm really just trying to put these strokes down and leave them alone. Yeah, I think actually I might now kind of feeling I should have left a little bit more of the pink in there. Okay, I'm gonna get some of this up in my clouds. I'm not gonna put it everywhere, but my clouds right now, especially in here, have a very unfinished sort of feel. So again, I put my stroke down, leave alone. Want to get in between here. I should switch to a smaller brush. Okay. And here. And then the edges on my clouds, I'm going to have really picking up the brightest, almost a bit of the pure white. Again, I really have to watch my shape. So these are turning into some pretty bold cumulus sort of clouds here. That's okay. And just some of the brightest areas in the snow. So I'm just brightening up kind of the tops of these here so that sort of takes on the feel that they're just picking up a little bit more light. Sun's a little bit more directly on them. So there's a little bit more variety in our snow as well. Now we can really see how much darker this now looks, this snow here. And I still think it's a bit too, like, these are just a lot more similar in nature than these are. And so that makes me think that I still need to get this a bit duller, this to feel a little more like, because I like this feels a little more like what the light would be doing than this does. This feels a little too exaggerated for my liking. So I'm actually going to go back to that again, that area. And see what we've got. Okay, I think I'll be happy with this. Yeah, I think this is going to be a little bit closer to what I want. It's getting a little bit of a dry brush sort of feel to it. And it's also getting lighter. My color is actually changing. I don't want that to happen. I don't want it to feel so dry brush, but unfortunately I didn't quite mix up enough paint. But this is definitely making me, I feel much better about this than what I had before. It just felt like it was too, just yeah, it's just too much, too saturated. It need to be neutralized just a little bit, just tone down a little bit. Again, in between the trees here as well. There, that feels better to me. Now that feels more like it's unified with that part there. Okay, I think I'm going to call this one, because if I start to continue with, I'm afraid it's going to, no, I actually, I'm going to start to fuss with it. I'm going to do one last little bit at the risk of fussing. But I want this rock, I want this highlight to stand out a little bit more. So I'm going to just mix up just a little bit more of this light lavender highlight. I want that edge. I want that to stand out up against the snow here. And of course, if I do that to that, then that means I gotta do it in a few other places. But that's probably fine. Sometimes just a single stroke is enough. Don't want to overdo it. A bit in my rocks. That was a bit much, I think. A bit too much on that one. That one's actually more in the snow. Let's tone that. Nope, it's not toning it down at all. Yeah. There we go. Okay. Part of the problem with fussing is you start to add new colors and you start to lose the unity. And then it just gets this sort of busy sort of feel to it. It's always kind of hard to know when is it time to stop at these. Do kind of feel like they need a little bit of highlight there. So here we go. Here's the piece we worked from. Okay, we can see the difference. Difference is fine. Again, in the end, well, you know, normally I would be showing this, but I do have to refer. I can't just show this without, you know, publicly. I cannot display this. I would never display this without any sort of reference to, you know, to where it came from. Okay, because that would be plagiarism, of course, which I, you know, I'm not about that. But anyways, but I guess the point I did want to make is, you know, in the end, we only display our piece. We don't display our reference images because it's not about comparing to the reference image. It's just about looking at, you know, our final piece, and does it feel like it has atmosphere? Does it feel like, you know, we could actually be there and getting an experience of what it would be like to be in this mountain scene? Okay, and that's really what you're going for when you're doing landscape painting. So, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and stop it there. And yeah, congratulations if you end up watching this video later. And I'd love to see your final piece, your final painting. You can always email it, or yeah, artevermore1@gmail.com, or just, you know, I'm sure anyone who's going to be watching this video is going to know how to contact me anyway. So hope you had as much fun as I did.